look, the purpose of this session is just to provide a little bit of an overview. And so we'll talk a bit about motor neurone disease, talk about some of the common symptoms and the types of motor neurone disease, and a little bit about supports and services and what we do at M&D Victoria. So motor neurone disease, as it says there, is quite uncommon. It's quite a rare disease. Not, cancer, for example, is a very common disease. And whereas, most people don't have a lot to do with motor neurone disease. And you, as carers and nurses, you may never, some people may never, ever care for somebody with motor neurone disease, but obviously because I'm referring to Atticus Health, Mark and Sylvie's home care, you're going to get a couple if you do a good job. So, it's an uncommon disease of the nerves that control the voluntary movements, such as walking and swallowing and speaking and things like that. And there are changes to the nerves that cause muscle weakness, and the nerve cells actually die off. And so then, there's little to no movement in some areas of the body. And the symptoms increase over time, and there is no cure for MND yet. So therefore, it is a life-limiting or palliative care condition. But there are treatments and supports that are available, and we'll talk a bit about that. So this is what motor neurons do, and they carry instructions from the brain straight down the spinal cord and through nerve signals, and they make the nerve fibers fire, and then the muscles move as a result. So we're talking about the electrical system of the body. And so with motor neurons, they control the voluntary movements. So in motor neurone disease, these signals start, they don't reach the muscles and the movement becomes impaired. And as I say, the actual neurons or nerve cells die off. So this is basically what our electrical system looks like. You've got the kind of epicenter of it around the brain and the base of the brain, and then all of the nerve cells run down the spinal cord and into the limbs and different parts of the body. All right. And so in motor neurone disease, we talk about upper motor neurons and lower motor neurons. And depending on the type of motor neurone disease that a person has, different motor neurons in different parts of the body will be affected. The other thing is that no person with MND is the same. And so, their disease will, be slightly different. So these are some of the physical effects. So with the upper motor neurons, there's, stiffness and spasticity in the arms and in the arms and the hands. You can get sort of spasming. I don't know if you've seen with David and Maureen yet, as whether you've seen any sort of jumping or spasming with their muscles.
Not really, no.
I'm not sure if it's a big problem for either of them, but
Yeah.
a lot of people have little sort of ripples under the skin, and sometimes they're quite visible. So they'll be able to tell you if they actually have that. But for most people, it's not really a bother to them, but occasionally, they can get a bit vigorous and can make them feel a bit upset about it.
Yeah.
So they're not generally painful, but they can be, cause concern, I suppose. So they're called, those particular sort of ripples, of muscles are called fasciculations. And yeah, they can be quite common. And then with upper motor neurons, there can also be issues with reflexes becoming weakened, such as someone's cough can be very poor, or they have virtually no gag reflex. So they're very much at risk of choking on food and fluids and saliva, and potentially getting chest infections and pneumonia. Again, it depends on the type of motor neuron disease as to whether that, or when that becomes a problem. So with lower motor neurons, yeah, you can sort of get cramps in the legs and weakness, and you can see that with someone's legs that the muscles waste away, and with the arms as well. And yeah, they can have the twitching in the lower motor neurons called fasciculations as well. And yeah, when they go and see the neurologist or GP, they often, have one of those little reflex hammers, and they do some tests to see whether their reflexes are slower or intact, or whatever the situation may be, and that helps to gauge, at what stage the neurons are being affected. So these are the voluntary muscles in the body. And so, as you can see at the top, there are speech and swallowing muscles that are controlled by the neurons in the base of the brain stem. And then shoulder and neck muscles are controlled more by the nerves that are around that sort of head and neck region, and thoracic region is. And then moving down to the breathing muscles, obviously you've got your intercostals and your diaphragm muscle, which is controlled by the neurons around your thoracic spine. And same with the arm muscles. You're talking about that cervical and thoracic spine sort of vertebra and neurons around that area. And the leg muscles are, towards the sort of lumbar and sacral area of the spine, where those nerve fibers are working. Okay. MND doesn't directly involve the senses of sight, hearing, taste, touch, or smell. That's a good thing. And it generally doesn't affect bladder or bowel muscle control either. But continence can be an issue if someone can't get to the toilet in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's obviously important to talk to people about a regular toileting routine, and toileting, an hour or so after lunch, or before their meals, or whatever it is, so that they're not going to suddenly need to go. So there are several types of motor neuron disease. So it's an umbrella term for all these different types. And so the most common one is called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Did you like how I said that quick?
Yes.
Practiced all morning.
That's right. And I've practiced for at least the last 10 years. Anyway, so that's shortened to ALS, which is a lot easier to say. And in some areas of the world, such as the US, they refer to motor neuron disease as ALS. In Australia and other parts of the world, they call it motor neuron disease, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is one variation of that motor neuron disease. So for I haven't looked at these slides for a while. Might tell us. It's a bit of a quiz for me to see if I remember. So about 90% of people with ALS, the ALS variant of motor neurone disease, that 90% of people have that. And then progressive muscular atrophy is also reasonably common, where someone can have flail arms or flail legs, in that their arms stop working. The neurons that can control the muscles in their upper limbs stop working, so they have very limited movement of their arms and eventually their hands as well. And that can also be, you can have flail leg as well. So they might be able to do things with their upper limbs, but not much with their lower limbs. So obviously, if someone's got flail arm variant, then they're at risk of falling over and hurting themselves, and they can't put their arms out to stop themselves. So they tend to go down with a very loud bang, and can really hurt themselves, because they, once their balance is affected, they can't, right themselves. So I've got a client that lives in Mount Eliza, not far from where Maureen lives.
Oh, okay.
Who has flail arm, and he was down on the floor doing some exercises the other day, and we had a conversation, and he said, "I'm not doing that again, David, because I got stuck on the floor. I couldn't get up again."
Oh.
So had to crawl along the floor to get his phone to ring a neighbour to come and help him.
Oh.
So that was difficult.
Mm.
So that's PMA, that variant.
And can it just be one arm or one leg?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah, could be anything.
It generally it starts sort of in one leg or one foot, or one hand or one arm, and then it will eventually move to the other side. Yeah, but in the ALS variety, which is more common, it often starts at the feet, where someone might hear that their foot sort of slapping on the pavement as they walk, and then they slowly get generalized weakness and have more difficulty walking and so on. So with the type that's listed under ALS, they're progressive bulbar palsy. Does anyone know what that is?
No.
Paralyzed?
So one of my clients went to the GP and was talking about how he had motor neurone disease, the bulbar type, and the GP says, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Oh, the neurologist said I had bulbar," and he said, "Well, you might crash around a bit, but no, it's not called that." So yeah, it's called bulbar palsy, and for some people with the ALS variety, which is the majority of people, there are a smaller percentage of people that have what's called, you know, PBP, or progressive bulbar palsy, and that's it's called bulbar because the part of the brain in the brainstem where where the MND commences, it's actually a bulb shape in the base of the brain. And so it affects those, as we were talking about before. I think let me go backwards, is it?
I'm not sure.
No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so yeah, as we were talking about before in the earlier slide, you can get, voluntary muscles that control your speech and swallowing, and so those are the muscles that are affected. First off with bulbar palsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Maureen, for example, has some significant difficulty with speaking now.
Yeah.
Whereas when I met her, she was a great talker. In fact,
I think since October.
Yeah, in fact, yeah. So for her, it's been actually fairly rapid.
Mm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she still talks.
She still likes to talk, though, I was going to say.
Oh,
She still
yeah.
likes to talk.
Last time I went to see her, and I went to see her, I think early December, and yeah, I still couldn't get out. Still couldn't get out of there. With a short visit, it was still a,
That whiteboard, she writes quick.
She does extremely well.
Yeah.
And because she's been a teacher, she's got very clear writing as well, which makes a lot of difference. But yeah, she's a delightful lady, and but yeah, certainly her bulbar palsy is a huge issue for her, and is starting to affect her ability to swallow
Yeah.
foods as well. She has to have a lot more things sort of mushed up and so on too. So yeah, so then with these other varieties, you can get PLS, which is primary lateral sclerosis, and that occurs in about 1% of people with motor neurone disease. And so, it's generally a very slowly progressing form of motor neurone disease. And, for example, I've got a fellow that's had PLS for about 15 years so far, and he's only just stopped walking.
Okay.
So for the whole 15 years, he's been, reasonably, he's been able to ambulate, for many years around his house, and quite a while he was, quite independent with all of his activities of daily living as well. Yeah, so in PLS, it's generally it affects people's mobility, their difficulty walking, but and they can get some upper limb weakness, but it's not as pronounced usually as the lower limb. But again, it's generally very slight. It's a very subtle sort of incremental change, and it can happen over many years. Yeah, so we have people on our program that have had it for 25 years. Stephen Hawking probably had PLS as well. He lived for over 40 years with it. So yeah, there are some examples of of this rarer form. And then you can get an isolated bulbar palsy where everything else seems to be reasonably normal, but the person's speech and swallow is affected, quite dramatically. And so over time, the neurologist assesses the person, the patient, and they advise what type of motor neurone disease the person has. But sometimes it can take a while to work that out. So there we are. How about that?
Oh, you remembered it all. Well done.
No. So 90% have ALS. And I'm not sure exactly what the percentage would be that have bulbar palsy as well, included in that, but I would say that it's probably 15-20%. And then 9% have this flail arm progressive muscular atrophy type, and yeah, as I say, 1% have the PLS. So as we were saying before, it's not a very common disease. So there's about 2,200 people living in Australia with MND at the moment, and most people are diagnosed with MND between their 50s and 70s. But we do have clients in their 30s, and we obviously have people in their 80s and 90s that have motor neurone disease. And we actually have one girl that's about 10 years of age, and she has a very rare form of juvenile motor neurone disease. She's one of only 5 in the world or something. So slightly more men than women are affected, like it might be 51% to 49 or something. The average survival is between 1 and 5 years from diagnosis, but as we've been saying, it can vary enormously. And by the time someone reaches their 50s to 70s, they often have other medical conditions as well, or comorbidities. So You know, for example, I had a lady who died recently. She had a fairly rapid progression of her disease, but we were never quite sure whether it was her motor neurone disease that was progressing rapidly or whether it was her other medical conditions. She certainly had cardiac and circulatory problems, and she had complications from some, she had failed coronary artery bypass graft and things like that. So, yeah, it's a bit hard to know exactly what the survival, whether that is accurate for a lot of people. But again, it's an average kind of idea. I've actually had 3 people in my extended family that have had motor neurone disease, and each of them lasted about 2 to 3 years. None of them were related to each other, but they're all part of my extended family, which is quite unusual for for a family to have 3 people in that extended family. So one was my father-in-law, and one was my wife's my mother's sister's husband, and the other one was on my dad's side, his brother's daughter's husband. So as I say, none of them directly related, and none of them blood related, but still in that extended family group. As I say, we've got people on a program that have had motor neurone disease for 20, 25 years. I had a fellow last year that from diagnosis to death was only 3 months. So there's an enormous variation in how the disease progresses, and obviously, the shorter it is, the more distressing it is.
Yeah.
And as it says there, it is there is no cure for motor neurone disease, but there are there's many treatments and that where symptoms can be better managed, and so that people aren't suffering. So diagnosis is a difficult thing with motor neurone disease as well. There's no one definitive test that diagnoses it. So you need 2 neurologists to actually diagnose motor neurone disease, and there's a number of tests, including electrical sort of myography and MRI scans and blood tests and all sorts of bits and pieces to work out what's happening with the muscles and what's happening with the nerve conduction. And this, as I say, it takes some time for that diagnostic process to occur. And often people have symptoms for quite some time before they're actually diagnosed. So we're talking about people living between 1 and 5 years. For some people, they may have had symptoms for several years. And then it takes that long to sort of work out that something's wrong and to go through the diagnostic process to actually come to the diagnosis. So as it says there, sometimes it involves ruling out other conditions. There are, other neuropathies that can sort of present in a similar way to motor neurone disease. In years gone by, there were things like, people were diagnosed with all sorts of conditions, and they may well have had motor neurone disease, but they didn't have the technology to be able to diagnose it. So, they might have been thought to have had a stroke, or, thought to have had multiple sclerosis or some other neuropathy that they knew more about. But so as a result, the numbers of people with motor neurone disease are slowly increasing, but we don't think that it's necessarily that there's a higher prevalence in the community. It's just that the diagnosis or the diagnostic process is better. It's a bit more accurate. And yeah, the rate varies. The rate of progression varies enormously from person to person, depending on the type of motor neurone disease. So as I say, for a lot of people, it starts off in the foot, where there's there's a slowness, there's a slapping of the foot on the pavement. They might get a foot drop, where they're dragging their foot, that sort of thing. And then over time, it will slowly affect other areas of the body, until eventually the person is unable to move on their own in many cases.
And breathing, is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it can certainly affect breathing, particularly when it gets in, moves up in, as I say, if they get progressive bulbar palsy, straight away, then it will affect their breathing and swallowing and speech a lot more quickly. But for others, it generally takes a little longer, and will work its way through the body more slowly.
Yeah.
But yes, one of the ways that one of the things that the neurologist will check every so often, is to do a lung function test, and there are a few different procedures within those tests to look at the lung capacity and so on, and it's that power, that sort of power of the diaphragm to for someone to be able to get good gas exchange. Often they can have a build-up of carbon dioxide because they're not able to exhale that carbon dioxide very efficiently, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, and so there are there's various things that can be done to help people's breathing, and there's people often go onto a BiPAP machine, which
in the
is called
nighttime, or
non-invasive ventilation.
Yeah.
So that it's often prescribed for use at night time initially, but for many people they also require it during the day, and we often encourage them to have it during the day as well if they're feeling a bit tired. Yeah. So as I was saying before, 90% of people that have a MND, the cause is not known. It's random. There's no particular risk factors, or there's nothing that we know that is specifically putting the person at risk of getting motor neurone disease, and so they call that sporadic. And then in about 10% of cases, there is a familial or genetic component. So yeah, they do have genetic clinics where people can go and have blood tests and go through a process of working out if there is a familial component to it. So in my father-in-law's case, it was the third marriage from my mother-in-law, so there was no, he didn't have any children and didn't have any children with my mother-in-law. But his sister had motor neurone disease, and so it was clear that there was a genetic component for him.
Yeah, sorry, I knew well, I didn't know, I heard from it, people in the past. But the dad got it, and he was 70.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, after he died, his daughter got it, and she was 38, and now she's gone. So yeah, just
yeah. That's right.
Like, it's just it's just really weird and interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, and people can get it at all sorts of different age groups, and I've got a fellow at the moment. His mother had motor neurone disease. She was in her 70s when she had it, and this fellow is only in his late 40s. So
I know. Like just like 3 years apart, and then she got it. It's just crazy.
Yes. yeah, pretty scary and pretty distressing for families. So look, as I say, there's no the research that's been done so far, that there aren't any clear links. There's no specific causes known of motor neurone disease, but these are what is suspected. So just getting older is means that you're more likely to get motor neurone disease, and that's evidenced by the fact that most people with motor neurone disease are diagnosed between their 50s and 70s. Environmental factors, have to have some impact, and they may include smoking. A lot of people with motor, there seems to be a higher level of people with motor neurone disease that might have been particularly active or had a lot of trauma to their body, elite sport, that sort of thing. Neil Danaher, you probably are aware of, is in the news. He's had motor neurone disease for about 9 years or something. He was obviously an elite sports person as a footballer. There's a baseballer called Lou Gehrig in the US, and he had motor neurone disease. As I say, in the US, they call it amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or sometimes they call it Lou Gehrig disease, because he was one of the people that sort of prompted them to to find out more about that particular disease. And yeah, there's been little clusters of things like, and they've wondered whether it's been linked to blue-green algae, but then the people that live right next to the lake didn't get it, so it's a bit hard to work out exactly what's going on. And whether you've had exposure to different chemicals, whether it's in the environment, who knows? And no, so as I say, about 10% of people are thought to have some sort of familial or genetic component. And yeah, the exciting thing about the research that's being done is that approximately 70% of the MND genes have been identified, and these weird codes down the bottom are some of the main ones. So if you Googled those things, they'd be able to tell you a bit of information about that. So yeah, I mean, it's quite clever the way that there are, that they've been quite successful in their research. But obviously, we all would like to have a cure, but it's going to take a little bit more time to get all the bits of the puzzle together. But it is, amazing the progress that they've made anyway. So as we were talking about, there's a number of symptoms of muscle wastage and weight loss. Someone's MND will progress faster if they lose weight all of a sudden. So they often get a dietitian and speech pathologist involved to find the right consistency of food and fluids to lessen the risk of choking, and also to make food and fluids more palatable for people. That they can give them supplement drinks like Resource and Ensure and things like that, to try and slow down the weight loss. And of course, a lot of that weight loss is just coming from the muscles wasting away. But it's also just that general weight loss, which obviously affects people's energy levels and general health. And a lot of people know they've got something wrong, and and they're eventually diagnosed with motor neurone disease, like my father-in-law, because you start to stumble and fall, and you realise something's not quite right. And obviously, the neurons are working that little bit harder because there's less of them that are active, and so you can get muscle fatigue as well. So it's a pretty long presentation, isn't it? But hopefully you're getting something out of it.
Yeah, no, good, thank you.
Yeah, happy for me to keep going.
Yeah.
So look, as I say, there's lots of different symptoms with weakness, and we talked a bit about muscle wastage and reduced movement in hands, arms, legs, voice. People like Maureen have slurred speech, and David to some extent as well. Some difficulty swallowing and chewing, so food needs to be modified.
So what happens with the swallowing then? And yeah, if that progressively gets worse and they can't swallow anymore or breathe properly, and do they have a tube or something? I know some of them are having like a peg.
They have a peg.
Yeah, peg.
Yes,
I know
yes.
David has that like for fluid. I
That's
think.
right. So yeah, I mean, obviously we all sign confidentiality agreements. So I'm happy to talk about specific clients. That's fine. So for David, he does have a percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy, which is a peg tube, feeding tube, and he had that put in some time ago. He's not having any food or supplements through the tube. He's just having water flushes at this stage. He's able to to eat soft foods. He's able to manage that at the moment. For Maureen, she actually went to have a peg tube put in, but it was unsuccessful. And so that was obviously a bit distressing for her. But they tried the procedure a couple of times and it failed, and so she wasn't able to have the feeding tube placed, which will generally mean that the person, because they won't be able to get their food supplemented, that obviously she may not live as long, with her MND. But having said that, not everybody decides that they want to have a feeding tube. And not everyone decides that they want to have the non-invasive ventilator as well. So it's an individual decision, but in Maureen's case, she did want it in the end, but then it actually wasn't available to her. So yeah, I mean, obviously, it's, but for her, it's and David to some extent, it's about being a bit more careful with what they're eating and drinking. They're Maureen in particular is having pureed foods and starting to use the supplements through the peg tube, and has thickener in powder that she puts into her drinks as well.
Yeah.
And before Christmas, they had just purchased a liquid thickener, which could be added to hot drinks, because she wanted to be able to have her cup of tea or coffee or whatever it was. But if you put the standard thickener in, it just gets all gluggy and is not very nice to drink. So, and for some people, they can have changes to their to the way that they express themselves. I've got a client, and she's got that sort of emotional lability where she can laugh at inappropriate times or cry at inappropriate times, and sometimes doesn't have a lot of control over that. And that's because that part of the brainstem that's being affected also affects there's some brain damage there, and causes the neurons to misfire, and so she's having some medication to help to control that, which is, she tells me today, is working for her. So but obviously very distressing for someone, if they're with their friends and family and they're laughing and crying inappropriately, or they don't have control over that. So just something to be aware of with that, sometimes, what you see isn't exactly what's happening, and but also if you know that someone has emotional lability, don't sort of play on that too much. Don't try and sort of laugh about it, and don't sort of just acknowledge it, and you know just help the person move on, because obviously it can cause them a lot of distress. Yeah, so we've talked about that. Yeah, so there is assistance there.
Yeah.
So it yeah,
Sorry.
so for a lot of people have difficulty or changes in the way that they are able to manage their emotions, and also that they can become a bit forgetful. MND can slow things down a little bit in a cognitive sense. Not that in most cases people don't have any sort of dementia, but in a small number of cases they do develop a frontotemporal dementia. And often those sort of memory issues are present before the physical symptoms of MND. But obviously when people have motor neurone disease, there's an awful lot their body's going through. There's also awful lot of emotions that they're experiencing. There's a lot to do with their their loss and grief that they're dealing with, loss of roles. For younger people, they have to give up work and give up a lot of different activities, which is obviously very distressing. And for those that have family, that can also be distressing, thinking that they're not going to be around to watch children grow up or see the grandchildren grow up, or these sorts of things. So as I say, there can be sort of a bit of brain fog, some slowing of cognition, but generally for most people they are, it doesn't affect them in a dementia sense, but there can be a slight slowing of their cognition, but it doesn't mean they're any less intelligent or anything like that. And I guess that can be the cruelty of the disease, that for some people they can lose their ability to move their muscles and require assistance with virtually everything, but then they can be locked into their bodies and they can know exactly what's going on but may not be able to communicate very effectively. So yeah, I'd certainly encourage you to have a look on the MND Australia website. It's a really good website which gives you a lot of information about the research that's going on in Australia and also worldwide. And yeah, so it's great to have research teams that we can also contribute to with our fundraising, but also contribute to as far as finding participants that can be involved in various trials. So there's something called the Mind Oz Registry, and so we encourage all of our clients to sign up for that. And it provides a database of information about the person's condition. The information can be de-identified for research purposes, but it's also there. There's information available for the client as in a health summary that they can also add to, and that can be quite useful as well. But it's also a good way of people, letting neurologists and research teams know that they're interested in being part of research, but and also being, when they might be eligible for different research. So multidisciplinary care is essential for people being well supported with their motor neurone disease. And so we're very fortunate in Victoria that we have a few different MND specific clinics. There are neurologists dotted all around the place, but there are several MND clinics that the Calvary Healthcare Bethlehem Clinic, which was in Parkdale until recently. They've moved back to the original site now in Caulfield South. So they're the statewide progressive neurological diseases clinic.
And do they have like, the allied health and everything there, or do they link them into allied health?
Yeah. So they at Calvary Bethlehem they have different neurological clinics, but they have one of them is the MND clinic, but they also support people with Huntington's and Parkinson's and a few of the other rarer neurological conditions as well. And yeah, so there's a neurologist assigned to the client, and there's all the allied health staff, so speech pathology, dietetics, physio, occupational therapy, music therapy, psychology, neuropsychology, neuropsychiatry, nursing. Yeah, there's a whole range of different supports that are available for people. And yeah, so we're very fortunate in Victoria that Calvary Bethlehem is around. But for those that live around the Geelong way or in the northern suburbs, there's also the Barwon Clinic, which is part of Barwon Health. So a lot of people in that southeastern part of the state, say Warrnambool or Portland or somewhere like that, they would go to the Geelong Clinic. And then there's also a clinic at Bundoora as well. But for both David and Maureen, they receive support from the outpatient clinic at Calvary.
Yeah.
And there is also the option of them going in to stay at the hospital as well for assessment and respite and things like that too.
Which is it called? Calvary Bethlehem Hospital? Is that what it's called? No.
Say that again.
Now, which hospital can they go to for respite?
Yeah. So I've just shortened it to Calvary Bethlehem, but it's the Calvary Healthcare Bethlehem.
Oh.
So that's in Kooyong Road, in Caulfield South. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're the specialists in MND in the state.
Okay. Oh, that's good. I think because when Dennis was sick, Maureen was thinking for a little bit of going into respite, but she didn't know. And I certainly didn't know because it was like the week before. But then we just ended up giving her more support at home. So that was fine.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So there are various options for people, and it depends what's going on. If the family's just exhausted, then, extra care at home might be enough. But if there are sort of issues with people's symptoms not being particularly well controlled, or there could be some, there's room for some fine tuning of medications or managing symptoms, or there needs to be a few equipment trials or something like that. Sometimes it's easier for the person to go into Calvary Bethlehem for assessment, and for that also then to become a respite admission as well, to give the family a bit of a break. So that's quite common. But yeah, for some people on the peninsula here, they also will consider residential aged care for respite, or sometimes the Frankston Palliative Care Unit in Golf Links Road, which is part of Peninsula Health. Or sometimes they might go into one of the palliative care beds at one of the private hospitals, say Peninsula Private or Ballura or the Bays.
Yeah.
So as I say, everyone knows what a multidisciplinary team looks like, but this kind of gives you a bit of an idea of who's involved in that. And then a whole lot of other services on the left, often government services that, will support those, support people as well with with financial assistance and also other services. And MND Victoria is down the bottom, and we also cover Tasmania, which is why I got Tas there. So look, there's lots of different support that's available, as I say, through the MND clinics, and through resources such as the MND Australia and MND Victoria websites, through the organisations themselves, and as far as respiratory support for the BiPAP machines and non-invasive ventilation, there's a support service, the VRSS, which is based at the Austin. So most people that require the PEG tubes and the NIV machine to help with their breathing, they'll go into the Austin for admission and implementation for those things. They often do usually do the PEG feeding tube and the NIV procedures within days of each other. They don't normally do one. They usually do them both together. So because they're obviously designed to support people to live a bit longer and to live more comfortably. So for both David and Maureen, they have home care packages, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yep.
But obviously it's been an enormous journey to get to this point of getting a home care package.
Yeah.
And it's tricky getting the supports that people need.
Yes.
So anyway, so these couple of slides, I'm not going to dwell on them too much because we're running out of time, but I guess the main thing is to acknowledge that each of the disciplines, the allied health team, has a role in helping people to manage their symptoms. So it's not just a medical role. There can be all sorts of allied health involvement as well.
Yeah.
And they all have different specialities depending on what the need is. So as I say, there are many, many different people involved in the multidisciplinary team. Now, these are the main things that, the main treatments or interventions that are available to people with motor neurone disease. As we've been saying, MND is not a curable condition at this point. And so, the multidisciplinary care team, there is research to show that having a multidisciplinary team involved actually helps people to live a bit longer because they're obviously getting supports that they need. Riluzole or Rilutec is a medication which has, is really the only medication that in Australia that's been shown. Sorry, I'm just got a noisy phone here. That's been shown to slow the progression of motor neurone disease a little bit, but it's still not significant. The non-invasive ventilation is a machine to assist with breathing. It looks a bit like a nebulizer machine, for someone with asthma, or people might be familiar with a CPAP machine for people that have difficulties with sleep apnea and require that. The BiPAP machine is slightly different. The CPAP machine is a continuous positive airway pressure. So it's a this air is maintained at a constant rate to keep the airways open. Whereas the BiPAP, there are two different pressures. There's a pressure to help to get the air into the person's lungs, and there's also a pressure to help to get rid of when the person exhales, to get rid of that carbon dioxide. And it's because, obviously their diaphragm and intercostal muscles are not working very efficiently. And we've talked about the PEG tube, which obviously can supplement nutrition and hydration or sometimes become the main source of food and fluids for someone. Not, they may not be able to swallow food and fluids, or sometimes even be able to manage their saliva terribly well. So, yeah, palliative care is often an important, intervention for people with motor neurone disease. That can be in an informal sense through care teams and GPs, or it can be in a formal sense by referring to a specialist, palliative care service. So on the peninsula, the team is in Main Street, Mornington, called Peninsula Home Hospice, and they have a multidisciplinary team of palliative trained staff. There's about 18 nurses, and there's about 10 allied health staff, and they support clients and families with their symptoms, and also emotional and social supports as well. So obviously, we encourage people to do advanced care planning and consider enduring power of attorney. And there's a few, the Office of the Public Advocate's a good place to get that information. We at MND Victoria, we offer carer supports. We have a few different online groups and, wellness days and, that families can tap into. And both Dennis and Maura have both tapped into those services with MND Victoria, which is terrific. And there are other supports, as we were saying, through the Australian government, but they're not really relevant here because you're on a home care package. But the Care Search, if you write down Care Search and Google that, that's a really good website to get some really good information about palliative care supports and different conditions. I'll encourage you to have a look at that. So I'm going to whiz through this because you can look it up on our website. But we've got over 30 staff that cover the whole state and Tasmania as well. And we are affiliated with MND Australia and the other state associations. So this is our office in Canterbury Road in Canterbury. Looks pretty swish, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so this is what we do. We do sort of three main things. We have our advisor service. So I'm one of about 22 advisors that cover Victoria and Tasmania, and so it's helping to monitor people's symptoms and the supports they need, and assist with referrals, and be liaised between different service providers and the M&D clinics and so on. For people that are under 65, we also do the support coordination for NDIS. And again, just a different bucket of money, and we do much the same things. We also have a large information service. We've got, if you want to know anything about motor neurone disease, we can find that information for you. We do lots of education sessions. We have a very large equipment loan library. We have over 3,000 pieces of equipment. So both David and Maureen have equipment from MND Victoria, which is provided to them free of charge. So we just need a therapist such as an OT or a physio to put in the request for that equipment, and then it can be delivered to them. And as I say, we've got some carer groups and different programs available, which we're hoping to keep expanding. And we have about 130 volunteers that cover the state as well, that can help in various different ways, in some in client support, social support, social visiting, hand and foot massage, biography writing, and also, helping in administrative ways and fundraising ways and awareness raising ways. So we'd be lost without our volunteers. They do enormous amounts for us. So, we have an education and client support team, which obviously puts together all the resources and all the, information that's required for someone to register with our service, and to give people resources as they go through the journey. We have Living with MND group, so that people can sign up with our service and attend a group and get some peer support from others. But also, it's an environment where we have different educational modules that we guide them through, which can be really helpful in finding out more information and tips and tricks of what is going to be helpful to them. And yeah, as I say, we have advisors and support coordinators, and we help with aged clients and also with those that are under 65 in getting them the supports that they need. And this is the warehouse out at Mount Waverley, which we currently store all of our equipment at with a company called Alta, and we pay them as a third party to maintain that and deliver our equipment for us. But yeah, as you can see, there's a very large amount of equipment there. And this is one of our volunteers that helps on reception, Peter. And as I say, there's a few different volunteer roles that people assist with. And I didn't mention bereavement support too. They do some great work in phoning families, 3 months after the person's died and checking they're okay. And of course, we receive some government funding, but it's not enough to maintain all of our programs. So we do have to have a fairly significant amount of fundraising that occurs throughout the year as well. And obviously that's linked in with our awareness raising as well. As we're talking about before, MND is a fairly rare disease, so a lot of people don't know about, services. So it's a bit of an uphill battle to let people know about what we do. But the picture here is a group of families and interested people that went on a walk to defeat MND, which occurred around the Princess Park in Carlton, the outside of it. And so we're hoping to keep that going again as a yearly event.
They're always fun.
Been really huge through them and big freeze beanies, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, just with so with the big freeze beanies, they're fundraising for motor neurone disease, but they're not fundraising for motor neurone disease Victoria.
Oh, okay, yes.
The big freeze and the beanies and all that is part of an organisation called Fight MND.
Yep.
Which Neil Danaher and a couple of others helped to set up.
Yep.
They do support us to some extent. They gave us $400,000 last year, which we put towards some equipment upgrades.
Yeah.
But yeah, so far Fight MND has raised, I think it's over $70 million over the last 9 years or something like that, which is absolutely fantastic. And they've raised the profile of motor neurone disease as well, so we're extremely grateful to that. But there can be some confusion in the community about they don't realise that we're actually separate organisations.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I say, if you do see our logo, please talk to people about us and help to educate the community that we are a separate organisation, because we're the only organisation that actually provides the care and support.
Yeah.
Whereas Fight MND, most of their funds go towards research, which is also a really important thing to be doing.
Yeah.
We also contribute to research grants as well. We fundraise specifically for that. And we have families that also raise money under the MND Victoria banner to raise money for research as well. So, yeah, we sort of do a bit of everything.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah. So look, as I say, there's these are a few numbers and
Mm.
a few websites to get more information. Anyway, look, thanks again.
Thank you,
I know
David.
it's been a long session, but as hopefully
Been good.
it's been
Indeed.
helpful to you.
Yes.
Yep. Thanks, David.
Thank you so
Well,
much. And,
Hopefully we'll see you all around at some point.
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Good on
Thank
you.
Thank
Bye for
you.
now.
Bye.